Thank you for coming to this session. This session is about architecture blueprints for Power BI. Architecture is quite a wide topic to talk about in like 20 minutes, so I try to just focus on a specific area of that, which we'll go through it. Before I start, I'm Reza Rad. I'm a Power BI consultant, trainer. I'm based in the other side of the world, New Zealand. But I'm traveling around doing consulting training all around the world. I've written some books on Power BI. One of them, you can find it actually in the library over here. It's a Power BI architecture book. And these are my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me anytime you have any questions. Okay, talking about architecture in Power BI, there are different aspects that you can look at Power BI architecture. First, let's look at the development architecture, and that is what I'm going to focus mainly in this area. Now, before I start that, how many of you are already using Power BI? Okay, that's a good show of hands. So almost most of you are already using Power BI. Okay, so let's talk about different personas. Let's talk about the first persona of the person who is a single developer, single sole developer, business analyst in the team, building an analysis solution for users. Might have multiple users, but it's a single person developer, right? For such a person, you need a solution which is very agile, fast. It works everything really fast. Doesn't need an approval from IT to get the specific things done. And Power BI is quite good at that, right? So you all use Power BI. You know that in Power BI, everything is like quite easy to use. You just import the data in Power BI. You do all your analysis with DAX. You do the visualization. You publish it, and you give it access to your users, right? So one single Power BI file, one single PBIX file. Everyone is happy. No problem. Okay, that's the easy option. Now let's talk about another scenario. Let's talk about a scenario that we have multiple developers. Not single one developer, multiple developers. They want to do analysis solution. They might solve one analysis solution or multiple analysis solution, and they want to deliver it to their users, right? So in this scenario, if we use one single file, we have a lot of challenges, right? This might be a little bit hard to read from those guys in the back, but I highlighted those areas that are some of the challenges. When you have one single file, your file grows bigger and bigger over time. You add more tables, you add more data rows, you complicate things, more relationships. As a result, this would become slower and slower for your data refresh. You end up with 200 pages of visualization, 300 pages of visualization. It's hard to maintain, quite high maintenance solution that would be. And only one single developer can work with one single PBIX file, right? You cannot have multiple people working with one single PBIX file. So what is an example of that? An example of that is when you use one query in multiple files. When I talk about query, I mean a Power Query, which is actually a table, let's say. Is there a scenario that you need to use one table in multiple Power BI files? This is an example of that. Let's say I have a sales Power BI file, a sales PBIX file. I analyze everything about sales in it. And I have an inventory Power BI file, which I analyze anything about inventory. Because these are like two separate solutions, and I don't want to combine them together. Now, there are tables that you want to be in both files. Date table, for example, or product table. These are tables that you need to be in both files. So what you do in these scenarios, do you go and create a new table? Then you have to do all of those transformations again. Do you go select your first table, copy the entire M script, Power Query script, go to the second file, paste it over there, which is probably what most of us are doing, right? And then problem solved. Now, after 2 weeks, you realize that, okay, I missed the transformation. Let's go and add to have one single version of your source code. To have one single version of your source code. To have one single version of your source code. To have one single version of your source code. To have one single version of your source code. To have one single version of your source code. To have one single version of your source code. To have one single version of your source code. To have one single version of your source code. To have one single version of your source code. To have one single version of your source code, to have one single version of your source code, to have one single version of your source code, to have one single version of your source code, to have one single version of your source code, to have one single version of your source code. What is the solution for that? The solution for that is Dataflow. Power BI Dataflow. How many of you heard of Dataflows in Power BI? Okay, that's a good show of hands. Not as many as you who are working with Power BI. That's why I'm going to talk about Dataflow. This is Power BI Dataflow, not Azure Data Factory Dataflow or other Dataflows, right? We are talking about Power BI Dataflow. Power BI Dataflow is a Power Query process running in the cloud, independent from Power BI report. The most important part of this definition is being independent. Because right now, when you create a Power BI file, when you create a PBIX file, when you publish it to the cloud, when you schedule it to refresh, you are running Power Query in cloud, right? So that's not Dataflow. Making it independent from Power BI report makes it a Dataflow. That means that after running that Power Query script, your data is not stored in a Power BI model. So where it is stored, then you might ask where my data is stored in a Power BI Dataflow. That is stored at the moment in Azure Data Lake storage. There are discussions that we might have other storages available for this later on, but at the moment this is the only place that it is stored. It's stored as CSV files, back to old school. Now, when I talk about Azure Data Lake, a lot of people say, okay, I don't have actually Data Lake, so what happened? I don't have Azure Data Lake subscription, what happens for my scenario? The fact is that when you have a Power BI account, I'm not talking about free account because Dataflow is not available in free, but it's available in Pro and Premium. When you have a Power BI account, as part of the space that you have in Power BI Cloud, part of that is can go to Power BI desktop and say, get data from that data flow, right? It's like creating an intermediate storage. It's like creating a middle layer data warehouse or a database, right? This can help in a lot of scenarios. One of the scenarios that this can help with is actually putting your shared tables that you want to share in multiple solutions in your data flow. Your data flow runs those shared tables, store it in CSV file in Azure Data Lake storage, then multiple Power BI files get that and use it in different solutions, right? Which is what I'm going to show you in a second. This will also help to have a faster refresh time, because instead of running your Power BI file, doing all those data transformation, which might take like a couple of hours, you are doing that as your data flow process. So when Power BI reads that data, it's already transformed. You don't spend time for transforming that data, right? So let me show you that. And I'm not going to show a full example of data flow, how this works. So let's switch to this machine. Okay. So here I'm in Power BI website. Dataflow is the cloud-only solution. We don't have it on premises. So I have a workspace here. Now, in this workspace, I go to data flows. I already have a few. In this case, it seems I don't have it, so I'll go and create a data flow. So this is the place that you can go and create a data flow. There are different ways that you can create. I'm going to define a new entity. Tables are called entities here. because this is working based on the same concept of like CDM, common data model. So I can use Power Query cloud-based functions to go and build my transformations, right? I can connect to any of those data sources that I want and do my transformations. Or alternatively, I can go and use one of the existing transformations available and copy it into the Power BI data flow. So this is a Power BI file, desktop. I have a date table here, which I can go and go to edit queries. I can go to advanced editor for this. I can copy this script. Then I can come to here, and I say, OK, I want this to be a blank query. Then I paste that script here as soon as it comes, yeah. So I paste the script here and then click on next. Now, if this requires on-premises gateway and things like that, you have to go and set up those as well, because if it is local or local domain sources, you need to configure those. So here you can see that I have all of those transformations in here. This is Power Query in cloud or Power Query in the service. As you can see, you can add more transformations here. You can add more tables. You can connect to other data sources. You can rename your tables to be whatever it is. So let's see, I call it date table. And then after doing all of these, you can save and close, right? Which you can call this data flow something. Let's say I call it Ignite data flow. Now, I saved this data flow. This data flow at the moment includes only one table. I can also go and refresh it so that it runs that process. It saves the output in that CSV file in Azure Data Lake. After saving that, I can go to files that I need to use this table and get data from that. So this is one of the files that I have, a Power BI file. It has sales table, product table, customer table. Let's say I want to add a date table into that. Now let me see, is that already refreshed or not? Not this one, sorry. The other one. I think it is refreshed, so, or it is still, no, it is refreshed, right? So here you can see it is refreshed just right now. So I'll go to this file, and in this file, let's say I want to add a date table. I simply go get data from Power BI data flows. So I don't really need to go and build that again. I go and say get data from Power BI data flows. And when I go there, I see all data flows that I have access to. You have to log in usually. And this one was under this workspace. Under this workspace, I had a lot of data flows. You can consider each of these as like a database. And then under this, I had that table, which I can select it. This preview window will show me a preview of that table. I select the table and load. I don't really do transformation anymore, right? And I can use it in any other Power BI file. So it is coming in a second. I can even go to this file, which I also need a date table, and add it. I can go to any other files and add it. All of your shared tables are good candidates to be in the data flow. You are actually building a data warehouse this way, right? So that date table that I added is right now here. I can create relationship and do other stuff, right? But you got the point how it is working. So let's go back to here on the slides. OK, so what you do actually through Dataflow for your architecture is to build your data warehouse, right? It's not SQL Server database, but it is still a bunch of tables. You can create relationship with those. Instead of processing it every single time, you go and build it that way, and then you reuse it multiple times. Another problem in this kind of scenario. So when we have multiple files, we have also another problem. Sometimes you need to have your dataset duplicated. Now let me talk about what is dataset first, because dataset is quite like unclear concept in Power BI. Dataset is where actually data lives in Power BI. When you open Power BI Desktop, you have the data in Power BI Desktop. You have the visualization in Power BI Desktop. Everything is in one place. Behind the scene, it's actually two objects. Visualization is a separate layer. Data is a separate layer. Data is sitting in a place, we call it a data set. When you have Power BI Desktop open, you can actually go to Task Manager and see that there is actually a different task running, Microsoft SQL Server Analysis Services. even if you run Power BI Desktop on a machine that doesn't have SQL Server Analysis Services, you'll still see that because Power BI data model is based on SQL Server Analysis Services tabular engine, right? That is where the data lives. That is what the data set is, right? So Dataset is a little bit clear in the website. When you publish your solution in the website, you actually see Dataset is one tab, report another tab. In the desktop, you just see all in one, but in fact, they are separate. So now let's go back to the problem that we had. So if I'm talking about Dataset, what if I use a calculation, tax calculation I'm talking about, in multiple files? Let's say I created a calculation running total of sales or average rolling 12 months sales. I want to replicate this from this file also to have it in another file. So what you do in these scenarios, you cannot use Dataflow. Dataflow is all about Power Query. It's all about making your Power Query one single version of the code. Dataflow is not good for this. What you should be using is something called shared dataset. In Power BI Word, you can have one dataset serving multiple visualization layers. You can do it in different ways. In the Power BI website, this doesn't seem to work. In the Power BI website, when you go and select the dataset, there is a little create new report on there, which you can go and create a new report. Or when you use a Power BI desktop, you have the option to say get data from Power BI dataset. That means this new report would be just a visualization. It won't have any data. It would be just visualizing the data in that dataset. So that means that you can have one dataset serving 4, 5, 10 different reports. If you have your calculation in this dataset, then you are using it across all of those visualizations. It's a live connection to this, right? So let me show you that also as another quick demo. So how far we are? Okay, 5 minutes to go. So here I have, let me close this one. I don't need that. So here, and not this one, sorry. I have a Power BI desktop, like blank Power BI desktop file. I'm going to say I want to get data from a Power BI dataset. And I click on that, and this will show me all datasets that my account has access to, right? These datasets might be datasets that I have published it, or it might be datasets that someone else published it. And then I can go and select any of these datasets. Let's say I go and select this one. Now, before I select that one, you also see that there is a endorsement system, a labeling system that you can go and put a label on your dataset, because when you create like 200 datasets, you have to somehow tell to your business analyst that this is the dataset that is good to use. The concept of like gold, silver, bronze report, things like that, right? Something like that. So I can say this is certified, go ahead and use that. Or this is promoted, which is, you can consider it as a silver. So I can go and select any of these. This will create a live connection to that dataset in the Power BI service. And then I can do my visualization. It's coming in a second. So here you can see I have my Power BI report just for visualization purpose only. If you have used Power BI, you know that this means Power BI live connection. I don't have the data tab or anything like that. I'm just visualizing. So here I can come and do any analysis like worldwide sales of movies by title. And it shows me that visualization. This is a Power BI report live connected to a Power BI dataset. Then I can go ahead and publish it. Let's say I save it as something like movies version 2 or something like that. And then I publish it. In this case, I'm going to publish it to this workspace. And while that is publishing, I go to that workspace just to show you what's happening in that workspace. So in this workspace, you can see that I have that dataset, the movies dataset, right? When I go to the report, you can actually see that for that movies dataset, I have actually more than one report. Let me show you this way. I go to that dataset, I click on this icon, which shows me the related items in that dataset, and it shows me that this dataset has actually 2 reports join to that. You can have like 10 reports, 15 reports, right? So this way, actually, I decoupled my, let's say, modeling layer. So going back to the slide and showing you the last part. So the architecture that I am proposing is this architecture. We are actually decoupling the three layers of building a BI solution. We have Dataflow, the part that you go and build your data transformation, you load it into your data warehouse style type of solution. Then you have your shared data models, shared data marts, shared data sets, whatever you might call it, which has all the calculations, the tabular engine of Power BI. And then you can have multiple reports, visualizations to show that information. How you build this architecture, you need to try different approaches. The data transformation part of it is getting data from all different data sources that you have. Then for your data modeling, you go and get data from Power BI data flows, not those data sources separately. And in your last part, which is your visualization, you get data from a Power BI data set. So that brings you to that architecture of having these three layers separately. And it's not just about Power BI. If you use Excel, right? A lot of people use export to Excel. But if you use analyze in Excel, that means that with Excel, you can actually connect to these data sets. So same approach works with Excel. How many of you use other tools than Power BI for visualization? Okay, if you use other tools, if you use Tableau, if you use any other tools, they have some limitation. Yeah, and Power BI, we take care of that. With Power BI, with XML endpoint, you can actually have your Tableau, your Qlik, any other visualization tools connecting to the Power BI model, because Power BI has a really powerful data model, which they don't. What about paginated reports? You can have paginated reports, again, in the same architecture. So all of these, Excel, Power BI, Tableau, Qlik, all of those can be your visualization layer. You still have your modeling layer and your data transformation layer. What are benefits of such an architecture? The benefit of this are like you are decoupling these three layers. As a result of these decoupling, you can have multiple developers working on different areas. Those who are good at Power Query, let them take care of Dataflow. Those who are good at DAX, let them take care of the shared data set. And usually you have more people good at visualization. They go and build the visualization part of it, right? I wanted also to mention you a tool which is we built. It's free, available. Everyone can use it. Power BI Helper. I don't have time to demo it. You can go and download it from our website. It gives you a lot of information, like documenting all of your Power BI file information, helping in better performance in your Power BI file, telling you information like where it is slow, where it is bigger, make it smaller, things like that. References to study more. As I said, 20 minutes is very short time to talk about all of these. I have written blog articles about every single part of this in details. If you are interested, go and download those. All of these are available in Radacat website, and I'm sure somehow you will have access to these slides anyway. And the book that I mentioned is also in the library. I'm available here. I'm just wrapping up for the sake of the next presenter. Feel free, if you have any questions, to come around. Thank you.